Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we are from the third group are going to do a presentation about the analysis of figurative language, metonymy, paradox, irony, and antithesis for poetry appreciation subject. Our group consists of 4 people that are Alreta Weo Nyola as second speaker, Finy Nurwalidaina Pane as the last speaker, me myself, Sekar Arum Febriana as the first speaker, and Shela Magdalina Heryana as the third speaker. Now, let's get started. This presentation will talk about 4 things. The first one, definition of figurative language. Second, example of poetry. Third, analysis of poetry. And the fourth, conclusion. 1. Definition of figurative language. What is figurative language? Figurative language is a language that intended to create an imagine, association, or other effect in the mind of the listener or reader that goes beyond the literal meaning or expected use of the word involved. Figurative language is used all the time in poetry and literature, and also in non-fiction writing and everyday speech. Using figurative language makes the thing we say more expressive and more engaging. There are 4 types of figurative language that will be discussed in this presentation. Types of figurative language: A. Metonymy, B. Paradox, C. Irony, and D. Antithesis. A. Metonymy. This terminology comes from Greece. Meta, that means showing a change, and onoma, that means name. So, metonymy is a figure of speech that using a certain word to explain all the word because it has a causing relationship. Metonymy may consist of the use of the name of one object or concept for another to which it is related. B. Paradox. Paradox is a term in rhetoric for a situation or statement that is or seems self-contradictory and even absurd, but many contain an insight into life. As a literary device, paradox functions as a means of setting up a situation, idea, or concept that appears on the surface to be contradictory or impossible. The next slide will be presented by Alreta Weo Nyola.
Thank you, Sekar. Now I'm going to continue. See irony. Irony comes from ironia, that means deception or pretending. Irony is a literary device in which contradictory statement or situation refer a reality that is different from what appears to be true. There are many forms of irony as a literary device, but its 3 main forms are verbal, dramatic, and situational. Types of irony. 1. Verbal irony. Verbal irony occurs when a speaker's intention is the opposite of what he or she is saying. 2. Dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is the state of the action or what is happening as far as what the reader or viewer knows is the reverse of what the players or character suppose it to be. 3. Situational irony. Situational irony refers to circumstances that turn out to be the reverse of what is expect or considered appropriate. The antithesis. Antithesis is a construction in which words are opposed but balanced in opposition. It is literary means opposite is a rhetorical device in which two opposite ideas are put together in a sentence to achieve a contrasting effect. The next slide will be presented by Kasela.
Now I'm going to continue. Example of Putri. Example of Metonymy Putri by William Butler Yeats. To place a combination around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but live where madly is won, I'll change other, a terrible beauty is born. Example of Paradox Putri by William Stephen. The Snowman. One must have a mind of winter to regard the force and the bows of the thin trees crushed with snow, and have been called a long time to behold the jumper sage with eyes the spruce roach in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind in the sound of a few lips, which is the sound of the line, full of the same wind that is blowing in the same birthplace. For the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. Example of Irony Putri. The Rime of the Ancient Marine by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Water, water everywhere, and all the world. The sing, water, water everywhere, no any drop to drink. Example of Antithesis Putri. The Hind and the Father by Johnny Dryden, too black for heaven and yet too wild for hill, who just drove how way down not lower field, so fierce, so fierce, so gently, so distant from high, it seemed a soft dimension from the sky. And the next slide will be presented by Naya.
Thank you, Shela. Now I'm going to continue. The third one is Analysis of Poetry. In the Poetry Easter 1916, Yeats makes use of both metonymy and metaphor. He is speaking about the motley clothes the men are wearing. They are made up of different colors and matched. The people are motley just as their clothes are motley. The poet is speaking about their clothes and their cultural differences. Next is, in the poetry The Snowman, Stephens is saying that the listener and observer of nature must be a man of snow. Compare man of steel for instance. That he must possess the qualities of snow, cold, detached, objective, but also ego-free. This gets us into a bit of paradox. Stephens appeared to be telling us not to project human qualities such as misery onto the non-human world of the wind and the snow, yet he is telling us to be more like the snow. Next is, in the poetry The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, in this line, Coleridge's speaker is considering their situation and that of their fellow crew members. It is ironic because, very simply, there is a lot of water but they can't drink it. They are at risk of dehydration and death while surrounded by the ocean. Next, in the first part of The Hind and the Panther, Dryden writes, "Too black for heaven and yet too white for hell." This line has two examples of antithesis, heaven and hell, and the colors black and white. The colors in the line represent sin and goodness. Next, the fourth one is conclusion. From the analysis on the previous slide, we can conclude that some poetry use figurative language to bring out emotions and help their readers form images in their minds. This figurative language is a useful way of conveying an idea that readers cannot understand otherwise, due to its complex and abstract nature. In metonymy, we can find example in the use of word monthly to represent people who wear it in Easter 1916. In paradox, we can find example in the Snowman that telling us not to project human qualities such as misery onto the non-human world of the wind and the snow, yet it telling us to be more like the snow, in which we can see that there is a contradictory or impossible in the statement, and that is what we call paradox. In irony, we can find example in the poetry The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, in which we can see that there is contradictory and that reality is different from what appears to be true. Lastly, in Antithesis, we can find example in the use of too black for heaven and yet too white for hell in The Hind and the Panther to show the contrasting effect of antithesis. Next is reference. This is some list that we use as a reference for this presentation. That's all from our group. Thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih telah menonton. Jangan lupa klik subscribe, nyalain lonceng notifikasi, like, komen, dan share ke semua teman-teman kalian.